the non-compliance with its obligation under the Safeguards Agreement, and the access refusal to experienced AAA inspectors have collectively led to a loss of continuity of knowledge, a gap that the agency now confirms cannot be restored. Of equal concern is a steady increase in Iran's stockpile of enriched uranium. As of May 17, and since late February, Iran's total enriched uranium stockpile has been considerably increased and reached up to 60%. This is deeply alarming for a non-proliferation perspective, as there is no credible civilian use for uranium enriched to this level. We remain deeply concerned with the Director General's inability to provide assurances that Iran's nuclear program is exclusively peaceful. Thirdly, Greece continues to view the JCPOA, as endorsed by this Council through Resolution 2231, as the best available framework to ensure that Iran's nuclear program remains exclusively peaceful. Its full and effective implementation would provide both transparency and confidence, not only with regard to verification, but also with a view towards sanctions relief, economic developments, and regional de-escalation. It is in this spirit that we fully support all diplomatic efforts to secure Tehran's full compliance with its obligations under the JCPOA. We welcome last Friday E3 Iran talks, while we call for the resumption of the US-Iran talks. As a country with historical ties and geographical proximity to the region, Greece stands ready to support all constructive efforts aimed at de-escalation, diplomacy, and dialogue. Madam President, in closing, let me stress that Iran, as a matter of fact no other nation, must never be allowed to acquire a nuclear weapon. The international community cannot afford a major nuclear proliferation crisis. With the credibility of the global non-proliferation regime at stake, and with military escalation threatening the security and stability of the Middle East, the time has come for responsible action. We call on all parties to demonstrate political will, engage meaningfully and in good faith, and reaffirm the commitment to dialogue and diplomacy. As the events of the last day demonstrate, we are glad that even in these very difficult circumstances, the window of diplomacy has remained open, and there is now an opportunity for addressing through dialogue all concerns about the Iranian nuclear program. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Greece for his statement, and I give the floor now to the representative of Denmark.
Thank you, Madam President. And as others, I thank Under-Secretary General Di Carlo, Ambassador Lambrinidis, and Ambassador Spoga for your briefings and updates. Madam President, the situation in the Middle East continues to evolve. We welcome the announced ceasefire between Israel and Iran as a critical step towards de-escalation in a region that has endured far too much instability. We urge both parties to adhere to it and to abide by the obligations under the UN Charter and international law. This moment must be seized, not only to consolidate gains in regional security, but also to create the necessary space for renewed diplomatic engagement on the nuclear file. It is in the interest of all parties to pursue a negotiated solution, which is the only viable path to restore stability and lasting peace in the region. Madam President, even before the recent developments, Denmark has continuously expressed our concern about Iran's nuclear trajectory and its activities in blatant violation of the JCPOA. We have also persistently warned against an Iranian withdrawal from the Non-Proliferation Treaty. Our position is clear. Iran must never be allowed to acquire a nuclear weapon. This follows Iran's obligations under the Non-Proliferation Treaty and its commitments under the JCPOA. It is therefore deeply alarming that the recent IAEA report shows that Iran has failed to declare nuclear material in its possession and demonstrate that Iran has impeded and obstructed agency verification activities, as also conveyed by the 2231 facilitator letter. We reiterate our great concern that the IAEA is unable to assure that the Iranian nuclear program is exclusively peaceful. These concerns are furthered by Iran's production and stockpiling of vast amounts of enriched uranium with no plausible civilian purpose. It still remains unclear whether Iran has ceased its enriching activities. We do not take it lightly and call on Iran to change its course of action and abide by its obligation. This remains true, even if recent events have changed the circumstances surrounding the Iranian nuclear issue. Madam President, as many has highlighted here today, this is the last mandated meeting before the expiration of the JCPOA, meaning there is no time to spare. Iran must, therefore, engage seriously in negotiations with the international community, leading to an agreement which addresses all concerns related to its nuclear program. Securing an agreement on the nuclear issue has the potential to foster lasting stability in the Middle East. All efforts must be deployed to this end. The role of the IAEA's verification and monitoring of Iran's nuclear program remains imperative, also in the current situation. Denmark strongly supports the agency's professional and impartial efforts in carrying out its mandate to verify the implementation of Iran's safeguard obligations, especially during these complex circumstances where the safety and security of the inspectors must also be kept in mind. Madam President, in closing, we continue to call for a diplomatic solution. Only a negotiated solution can bring a lasting settlement to concerns about Iran's nuclear program. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Denmark for her statement, and I give the floor to the representative of Pakistan.
Thank you, Madam President. We thank Under-Secretary General Rosemary DiCarlo and Ambassador Stavros Lambrinidis for their briefings. I would also like to thank Ambassador Samuel Zboga for presenting the report in his capacity as the facilitator of the 2231 format. Madam President, the core common element of these three briefings that we just heard in this meeting was the primacy of a peaceful diplomatic solution. We are meeting at a crucial point in the implementation of Resolution 2231 and Security Council's consideration of Iran's nuclear issue. Obviously, the developments of the past 2 weeks have impacted the context of the whole issue and have a bearing on our discussions today. However, what has not changed are the fundamental principles and multilateral spirit behind the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action and the Resolution 2231 adopted 10 years ago. The JCPOA was a unique instrument, manifestation of an approach based on dialogue, diplomacy, and pragmatism. It was the outcome of painstaking and arduous, yet constructive negotiations. It charted a roadmap to comprehensively address the concerns of the parties concerned by clearly defining their relevant obligations and responsibilities. While proceeding very well, the agreement was regrettably disrupted, leaving many complications in its wake that impacted the full and faithful implementation of the JCPOA by various parties. Notwithstanding those challenges, the most widely held view was that dialogue, diplomacy, and constructive engagement was the only viable way forward. That view was still there and was indeed back in play with the negotiations between Iran and the United States facilitated by Oman, till it was violently disrupted by the unlawful and illegal military attacks on the IAEA safeguarded Iranian nuclear facilities. These military strikes also impeded the IAEA's crucial verification functions in Iran. Pakistan has expressed its clear position on these developments in this chamber and elsewhere over the past 2 weeks. Our leadership has also remained actively engaged with counterparts from many other countries. Now, the outstanding issues, as well as the full and effective implementation of Resolution 2231. We reaffirm our support for the resolution of the Iranian nuclear issue through peaceful means, diplomatic engagement, and sustained dialogue. Pakistan advocates the preservation and renewal of the JCPOA or its substitution by an equally sound agreement that is acceptable to all sides before it expires in October this year. The IAEA is the institution responsible for verifying compliance with the respective nuclear safeguards obligations of member states. It is mandated to do so in an objective, impartial, and credible manner, purely on technical grounds. The IAEA must be enabled to fulfill this statutory function. We believe that verification activities by the IAEA should continue unimpeded. The IAEA must continue its work in an impartial and apolitical manner to provide objective reporting and credible information regarding the issues under its purview. Madam President, with regards to recent developments in the region, I would like to emphasize the following points. First, condemnation of violation of the sovereignty and territorial integrity of member states, and the threat or use of force to settle disputes. Second, clear rejection of attacks on IAEA safeguarded nuclear facilities, which violate Security Council and IAEA resolutions as well as international humanitarian law. Third, we request the Secretary General to report on the implications of these developments on the implementation of Resolution 2231, particularly those arising from military strikes against nuclear facilities. And we also request the Director General IAEA to share his assessment from legal, technical, safety, security, and safeguards points of view. Fourth, we urge sustained cessation of hostilities and a permanent ceasefire to allow resumption of dialogue and verification activities by the IAEA. Fifth, there is an urgent need to renew diplomatic engagement to seriously and faithfully address the outstanding issues in a cooperative manner as per the rights, obligations, and responsibilities of the parties concerned. Madam President, we welcome the announcement of the ceasefire understanding between Iran and Israel, and we expect this to be fully respected. We commend all those who played a pivotal role in facilitating this development and hope this positive step will contribute to lasting peace and stability in the region. This is a vital step that must now be followed up by constructive and comprehensive engagement. Pakistan firmly believes that all disputes must be resolved in accordance with the principles of the UN Charter and international law, including respect for sovereignty and territorial integrity. We call on all parties to fulfill their respective obligations and responsibilities and avoid any further escalation. Most importantly, the trust and confidence in the diplomatic engagement that was damaged by the unprovoked aggression must be meticulously restored. The Council should allow sufficient time to continuing efforts between the IAEA and Iran, as well as other parties, to resolve outstanding issues. Recent developments have yet again manifested the grave dangers that present themselves when there are violations of the UN Charter and international law. The cost of seeking to resolve issues through military means is more than evident. The region, and indeed the whole world, cannot be held hostage to such adventures, dangerous precedents, and spiraling escalations. Diplomatic engagement and the resumption of dialogue are the best means to resolve all outstanding issues. Diplomacy has delivered previously, and with the necessary political will, it can certainly deliver again. Lastly, allow me to inform the Council that following up on the draft resolution circulated by China, Pakistan, and Russia on Sunday, we have updated and revised the text to reflect the latest developments, including the ceasefire, and have circulated it to Council members. Securing the ceasefire was one of the primary objectives of the draft resolution, in addition to calling for a negotiated settlement of the Iranian nuclear issue and promoting respect for international law under all circumstances. We will engage constructively with fellow members on the text of this draft resolution with a view to arriving at a consensus outcome, signifying the Council's support for sustained ceasefire and sustained dialogue and diplomatic engagement for a lasting solution. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Pakistan for his statement, and I give the floor to the representative of the United Kingdom.
Thank you, President. And I thank Under-Secretary General Di Carlo, Ambassador Lambrinidis, and Ambassador Zboga for your briefings. Let me start by welcoming the announcement by President Trump of a ceasefire between Israel and Iran. But the situation remains extremely fragile. We call on all sides to respect the ceasefire in full. Our priority remains stability in the Middle East, and we are clear that restarting this conflict is in no one's interest. Now is the time for a return to diplomacy. We, along with our partners, are clear that only diplomacy can achieve a durable solution to the Iranian nuclear threat. We urge Iran to take this opportunity to engage in negotiations now. It is critical that Iran does not miss this window for diplomacy. President, as we know, Iran's nuclear program has been far beyond any credible civilian justification, including an enriched uranium stockpile 40 times the limit set by the JCPOA. It is urgent that the IAEA have full access, especially on Iran's enriched uranium stockpile. We have been clear that Iran cannot develop or acquire a nuclear weapon. The UK, alongside our E3 partners, stands ready to support efforts towards a negotiated solution. We will use all diplomatic levers at our disposal to support a negotiated outcome and ensure Iran does not develop a nuclear weapon. President, finally, we commend the IAEA and the Director General for their vital work, including under the mandate of UN Security Council Resolution 2231. They have displayed professionalism and impartiality, and they have our full support. We urge Iran to cooperate with the IAEA in the interests of both safety and diplomacy. Colleagues, we urge all parties to urgently pursue a deal that establishes international confidence long-term that Iran's nuclear program is exclusively peaceful. This ceasefire is the first step towards that. I thank you.
I thank the representative of the United Kingdom for her statement, and I give the floor now to the representative of China.
主席，我感谢迪卡洛副秘书长、欧盟驻联合国代表团兰布里尼蒂斯大使及斯洛文尼亚常驻代表日博加尔大使所做的通报。以色列和美国以未来可能的威胁为由，对伊朗动武，严重违反国际法，侵犯伊朗主权，袭击国际原子能机构保障监督下的伊朗核设施，更是开创了恶劣的先例，严重威胁国际核不扩散体系。中方再次明确表示谴责。上述行径还破坏了解决伊核问题的外交努力，给安理会第2231号决议执行带来高度的不确定性。中方对此严重关切，深感担忧。主席，中方注意到部分安理会成员一味指责伊朗违反防扩散义务，试图为以色列和美国的军事行动开脱。中方希望这些国家正视以下基本事实：美国才是伊朗核危机的 始作俑者，是美国在2018年单方面退出伊核全面协议，恢复并不断升级对伊单边制裁，采取极限施压措施，致使伊方无法享有协议赋予的经济红利，被迫减少履行协议义务。又是美国置自身信誉于不顾，悍然对伊核设施发动军事打击，破坏由其自身发起的谈判进程，再度导致伊核问题走入困局，地区局势骤然升级。伊朗解决伊核问题的诚意应该得到重视。时至今日，伊朗仍在履行核不扩散义务，执行全面保障监督协定。伊朗一再强调不寻求发展核武器，以建设性姿态与美方开展多轮的专业务实谈判，从未放弃外交努力。然而，一些国家片面援引国际原子能机构总干事报告内容，无视伊朗与机构合作的积极面，在没有充分协商情况下强行推动机构理事会通过决议，损害对话氛围，激化矛盾和对抗。有关国家应深刻反思这一不负责任的举措所产生的恶劣影响。主席，中方认为，解决伊核问题的外交手段尚未穷尽，和平解决仍有希望。各方应汲取教训，在平等基础上重启对话，推动伊朗核问题重返政治解决轨道。我强调3点：第一，确保停火止战是当务之急。事实证明，武力不是解决国际争端的正确方式，也解决不了伊核问题。中方注意到当前的局势发展，期待实现真正停火，切实有效落地。有关方面应采取切实措施，防止局势再次升级。国际社会必须为推动局势降温、推动对话谈判做出努力。第二，坚持政治解决是唯一途径。伊核全面协议和安理会第2231号决议确定的核心目标和宗旨，在伊核问题下步政治解决进程中依然有效。要坚持政治外交解决大方向，反对诉诸武力和非法制裁。要统筹核不扩散与和平利用核能的目标，伊朗应继续恪守不发展核武器的承诺，各方应充分尊重伊朗作为不扩散核武器条约缔约国享有的和平利用核能的权利。各方应坚持通过平等对话协商解决各自的合理关切。第三，开启对话谈判是根本出路。中方支持一切为重启伊核谈判所做的努力，相信这也是安理会绝大多数成员的立场。安理会应发挥建设性作用，协助有关各方建立信任、弥合分歧，为重启谈判创造有利条件。相关国家应摒弃动辄威胁启动快速恢复制裁机制的做法，否则只会加剧紧张对立，甚至进一步破坏外交努力。伊核问题的妥善解决事关国际防扩散体系的权威性和有效性，对中东地区和平稳定至关重要。当前地区局势处在关键和紧要时刻，中方呼吁各方增强紧迫意识，体现责任担当，尽早推动局势缓和降温，尽早启动 复谈进程。作为安理会常任理事国和伊核问题全面协议参与方，中方将积极秉持客观公正立场，同各方加强沟通协调，凝聚合力，主持公道，为恢复中东地区和平、推进伊核问题政治解决进程发挥建设性作用。谢谢主席。
I thank the representative of China for his statement. I shall now make a statement in my capacity as representative of Guyana. I thank the USG Rosemary DiCarlo for presenting the 19th report of the Secretary General on the implementation of Resolution 2231, and Ambassador Samuel Bogar for presenting the facilitator's report. I also thank Ambassador Lambrinidis for his briefing. In light of the recent escalations over the past 2 weeks, Guyana welcomes the announced ceasefire between Israel and Iran. We reiterate our call for dialogue and a return to the negotiating table as the only way forward for a diplomatic solution, one that promotes regional and international peace and security. Guyana also urges all parties to exercise maximum restraint and to unequivocally commit to safeguarding all nuclear installations in accordance with their international obligations. Colleagues, we stand at a critical juncture, with Resolution 2231 being mere months away from expiration and the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action still to achieve its core mandate. Guyana recalls that the JCPOA, endorsed by Resolution 2231, was meant to ensure that Iran's nuclear program includes cooperation in the field of peaceful uses of nuclear energy and engagement in mutually determined civil nuclear cooperation projects in accordance with Annex 3 of the JCPOA. We acknowledge the 19th report of the Secretary General on the implementation of Security Council Resolution 2231. We concur with his assessment that a diplomatic solution that ensures the exclusively peaceful nature of the Iranian nuclear program and promotes economic and trade cooperation between the Islamic Republic of Iran and the international community is the only viable pathway to peace and prosperity. We took note of last month's IAEA report on Iran's implementation of its commitment under the JCPOA, submitted in accordance with paragraph 4 of Resolution 2231. Notwithstanding the current circumstances, in fact, because of it, we encourage continued cooperation between the IAEA and Iran, including in addressing outstanding safeguards issues and in assessing the safety and security risks of the nuclear facilities. We also support the vital efforts of the Secretary General and the Joint Commission's procurement channel in facilitating the implementation of Resolution 2231 and the plan. Colleagues, Guyana recalls that agreement on the JCPOA was reached through intensive multilateral negotiations. We must continue to work towards the full implementation of the plan. Guyana believes that this is vital to ensuring regional and international peace and security, and for building confidence and trust among the parties. We therefore urge all participants to return to the plan and to engage in dialogue and diplomacy as a matter of urgency. Mutually assured destruction can never be a good policy. We urge stronger commitment toward the Non-Proliferation Treaty and encourage states that have not yet done so to accede to the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. We underscore the need for decisive action by the international community in advancing the abolition of nuclear weapons. In conclusion, I reiterate Guyana's commitment to a world free of nuclear weapons and one where there is greater investment in peace. I thank you. I resume my function as President of the Council. The representative of the United States has asked for the floor to make a further statement. I give her the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I am compelled to respond to some assertions made by certain council members. I spoke earlier about the precision operation the United States took to degrade Iran's capacity to produce a nuclear weapon. We did not take this action lightly, and we are confident that it is consistent with the inherent right of self-defense under the UN Charter. Nothing in the IAEA statute prevents states from taking legitimate steps for their own or collective self-defense. I thank you.
I thank the representative of the United States for her statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of the Islamic Republic of Iran.
Thank you. In the name of God, the compassionate and merciful, thank you, Madam President, for convening this meeting. Today is International Women's Day in Diplomacy. Let me begin by congratulating you and all women diplomats on this occasion. I also congratulate you on your successful leadership of the Council thus far in June. And I commend your tireless efforts in convening emergency meeting to draw the Security Council attention to the aggression by Israel and the United States against my country and the blatant violation. I wish to sincerely thank our brotherly and friendly nation, the State of Qatar, for its sincere and diplomatic efforts to help end Israeli aggression, establish a ceasefire, and prevent a further escalation of regional tensions that threaten peace and stability in the region. We thank Under Secretary General Ms. DiCarlo for her briefing. We take note of the Secretary General's report. We echo ourselves with the Secretary General's call for a diplomatic solution in his report, as well as with the USG in her today's briefing. We welcome Slovenia as facilitator of Resolution 2231 and appreciate Ambassador Jubogar and his team for preparing the report and today's briefing. We take note of the statement made by the Ambassador Lambrinidis, head of delegation of the European Union in the capacity of the coordinator of GCPOA. Madam President, first and foremost, I wish to express my strong objection to the participation of the delegation of the Israeli regime in this meeting. Legally and procedurally, Israel has no standing to take part in this meeting. This regime has no connection to the agenda of the meeting, no Resolution 2231 or the GCPOA. The participants to the GCPOA, as mentioned in Resolution 2231, are clearly defined, and the Council's practice in convening meeting under this agenda item has always been limited to the GCPOA participants. Madam President, this meeting is the final Security Council briefing on Resolution 2231 before its expiration in October 2025. In this context, I would like to make following points. First, the U.S. unilateral withdrawal from the GCPOA in 2018, it then imposed illegal extraterritorial sanctions violating UN Security Council Resolution 2231. Iran has honored its commitment in constraint the United States with the full support from the UK, France, and Germany has repeatedly violated both the spirit and letter of the GCPOA, as well as Resolution 2231. The root causes of the current situation are simple and clear. Therefore, they are not in a position to accuse Iran of non-compliance. Second, today's meeting takes place as my country faces an unprovoked military aggression that blatantly violates international law, the UN Charter, the Statute of the IAEA, the General Conference Resolution, and Resolution 2231. This Resolution 2231 calls on all UN member states to avoid actions that undermine the resolution and the GCPOA. However, with the full US support, Israel has targeted Iran's peaceful nuclear facilities, civilians, and civilian infrastructure. Israel falsely justified these attacks on Iran's peaceful nuclear program as an imminent threat. This claim is baseless and has no legal base. In reality, Israel, the region's only undeclared nuclear-armed entity and non-party to NPT, refused IAEA inspections and monitoring, while Iran complies with the NPT and has subjected its nuclear program to the most rigorous IAEA monitoring. The breach of Resolution 2231 and international law is not limited to Israel. The United States, a permanent council member responsible for upholding its resolution, also attacked Iran nuclear facilities under IAEA safeguard. Third, it is profoundly troubling that even after a decade of Resolution 2231, Iran's fully monitored, peaceful nuclear program has been repeatedly targeted by Israel and the United States. These illegal actions set a dangerous precedent, undermine the non-proliferation regime, and damage the credibility of the Security Council. Resolution 2231 was intended to promote peaceful solution and strengthen the Council's role in preventing unnecessary crises. However, reckless attacks on Iran's peaceful nuclear facilities by Israel and the US has gravely weakened this role. It is disappointing that the Council failed to condemn these illegal attacks, despite a strong request by Resolution 487, which prohibits such illegal acts. We call on the Council to, at the very least, explicitly condemn these aggressions and ensure they don't happen again. Fourth, the double standards are blatant. While the US, the UK, France maintain massive nuclear arsenals and overlook Israeli undeclared stockpiles, they baselessly claim Iran's peaceful program threatens international peace and security. These political accusations have been refuted for years by Iran's transparency and by its full cooperation with IAEA. If they truly care about the non-proliferation regime, they must condemn Israel's violation of international law and Resolution 487. Fifth, claims that Iran has violated Resolution 2231 are groundless. For past decades, Iran has upheld Resolution 2231 and the JCPOA. Our remedial measures have been fully consistent with these two instruments, meant only to restore balance and encourage all parties to return to their commitment. Iran remedial measure must not be misused to justify new pressure on the JCPOA or Resolution 2231. The Council must prevent any attempt to manipulate this mechanism against Iran. Sixth, Resolution 2231 must conclude on schedule, and Iran reject any attempt to revive expired provisions under any pretext. Unfortunately, European JCPOA participants have failed to meet their obligation. Even worse, they falsely assert that Iran is close to acquiring nuclear weapons, a falsehood unsupported by credible evidence. Our peaceful program under strict IAEA verification cannot be denied. Despite this aggression and the unconstructive behavior of the European parties, Iran remains committed to diplomacy and peaceful dispute resolution. Resolution 2231 proved that diplomacy can and must resolve differences. Seventh, Iran continues to believe a diplomatic resolution to nuclear and sanction issue is possible. Our commitment is evident through our full implementation of JCPOA and Resolution 2231. But if the other parties truly want a resolution, they must respect Iran's right and stop undermining diplomacy. 8. Iran never initiated this war. Once the aggressors stopped their attacks, Iran stopped its lawful military response as well. Nevertheless, Iran will not overlook the deceit and double standards. Our brave armed forces remain fully prepared to respond to any further threats or violation. Finally, to conclude, Madam President, we are now closer to diplomacy than ever before. The long large-scale war they thought could force Iran into so-called unconditional surrender and make it abandon its peaceful nuclear program through intimidation, threats, and the use of force has failed more clearly than ever. They unleashed their full military might, supporting and providing Israel with advanced fighter jets, sophisticated weaponry, and the most powerful bombs, even bunker busters, to attack Iran's peaceful nuclear facilities, and covertly, deliberately, and indiscriminately targeted civilians and critical infrastructures. These attacks led to the martyrdom of hundreds of innocent people, including women, children, nuclear scientists, academics, athletes, students, aid workers, and senior military officials, and left thousands more injured. We honor martyrs for their sacrifices as well as our brave, patriotic people in defense of our homeland. Iran emerged proud and steadfast in the face of this criminal aggression. This proves one simple truth more clearly than ever: diplomacy and dialogue are the only path to resolving the unnecessary crisis over Iran's peaceful program. I thank you.
I thank the representative of the Islamic Republic of Iran for his statement, and I give the floor now to the representative of Germany.
Madam President, I would like to thank Undersecretary General Di Carlo, Ambassador Spogar, and Ambassador Lambrininis for their valuable briefings and continuous efforts to implement United Nations Security Council Resolution 2231. For 2 decades, this Council has been deliberating on the Iranian nuclear program. We find ourselves at a particularly difficult juncture today. France, Germany, and the United Kingdom have consistently made every effort to find a diplomatic solution with Iran and will continue to do so, but the Iranian nuclear program remains a threat to international peace and security. Last Friday, the E3 foreign ministers and the EU High Representative met with their Iranian counterpart in Geneva to call upon Iran to engage in negotiations. We will continue our joint diplomatic effort to address all concerns associated with Iran's nuclear program. We have always been clear: Iran must not have a nuclear weapon. It can only be a non-nuclear weapon state under the NPT and must respect its nuclear safeguards obligations. Our efforts, conducted jointly with many partners around the globe, have aimed at preventing Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. We successfully concluded the JCPOA, which put robust and verifiable restrictions on Iran's nuclear program and would have provided the entire international community with confidence that Iran's nuclear activities remain exclusively peaceful. Throughout the last years, we witnessed an expansion of Iran's nuclear program far beyond Iran's commitments under the JCPOA. As of last month, Iran's enriched uranium stockpile were 40 times higher than allowed under the JCPOA limits. Iran continued to enrich uranium to up to 60%, which lacks any plausible civilian purpose, in an underground facility. It stopped implementing almost all of its key and transparency commitments it subscribed to under the JCPOA as well. The E3 have always pursued diplomacy to find a solution to the Iranian nuclear proliferation crisis. In 21 and 22, we negotiated in good faith to bring the US back into the JCPOA and Iran to full compliance with its commitments. To no avail. Iran twice refused a fair proposal put on the table by the coordinator and decided to further escalate its nuclear program to the level we all know. In conjecture with Iran's failure to comply with its legally binding safeguards obligations, an assessment that was confirmed by the Board of Governors resolution last month, Iran's nuclear activities have remained a threat to regional and at the end, Iran is obliged to declare and put all nuclear material located in Iran under IAEA safeguards. Iran must fully cooperate with the agency and refrain from threats against its personnel and DG Grossi himself, whose professional work we commend. In this regard, we are alerted by the initiative in the Iranian parliament to suspend cooperation with the agency as well as by Iran's deliberations to withdraw from the NPT. In closing, let me welcome the ceasefire between Israel and Iran announced yesterday and call on, like others, Germany joins calls on all sides to respect it and to re-engage in diplomacy. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Germany for her statement, and I give the floor to the representative of Israel.
Thank you, Madam President. First, I would like to thank USG De Carlo and the representatives from the EU and Slovenia for their remarks. To my colleague, the ambassador of Iran, I advise you, instead of giving advice to the Council how to conduct its affairs, to comply with the resolution of the Security Council, so we don't have to come back here almost every day and discuss the violations of Iran. Madam President, since launching Operation Rising Lion, Israel has worked to remove a double existential threat from both the nuclear threat and ballistic missiles. The IDF achieved complete air superiority over Tehran, struck a severe blow to the military leadership, and destroyed dozens of key regime targets. Our forces achieved the objectives of our operation in removing these threats. In full coordination with President Trump, Israel has agreed to the President's proposal for a ceasefire. We thank the United States for its support and critical role in removing the Iranian nuclear threat. Last night, the Iranian regime fired missiles at our civilian population. 4 innocent civilians were murdered in Beersheba. Their tragic deaths are a reminder of the evil we dealt with, a regime that could not restrain its hatred. Israel is a peaceful nation. We pray for peace 3 times a day. But make no mistake, we will respond forcefully to any violation of the ceasefire and any threat facing our people. I have no doubt that the leadership and the determination Israel displayed will allow the Abraham Accords to expand and bring other nations into the fold of normalization. Madam President, if there were a Nobel Prize for deception, the Iranian regime would win it every single year. It has broken every commitment it has ever made. There is no reason to believe this deception will not continue. Let's walk through the facts. In July 2015, this Council endorsed the JCPOA. Iran supposedly agreed to many conditions, restricting its enrichment, reducing its stockpile, and opening its facilities for inspection. In return, it was granted sanctions relief and global legitimacy. But even then, Iran was already building its exit strategy. By July 2019, Iran had already breached the 300-kilogram limit on enriched uranium. In January 2021, it resumed enrichment to 20%, more than 5 times the agreed limit. In April of that same year, it crossed into truly dangerous territory, enriching uranium to 60%. This is a level with no civilian application. In June 2022, Iran removed the IAEA's surveillance cameras and monitoring equipment, attempting to eliminate all oversight. Today, the IAEA is completely blind. As of May 2025, Iran's enriched uranium stockpile stands at over 9,000 kilograms. This includes more than 400 kilograms enriched to 60%. The IAEA has confirmed it can no longer verify the extent of Iran's program. For years, the international community spoke of Resolution 2231 and the JCPOA as a framework for peace. But for Iran, it was a framework for deception. While the diplomats and politicians talked, Iran built. While you negotiated, they enriched. While you hoped, they lied. Today, the regime in Tehran stands completely exposed as a regime that has weaponized every opportunity you gave it. Iran did not abandon its commitments last week or last month. It walked away from its obligations years ago. if it ever kept to them at all. It has been violating this resolution with impunity for as long as it existed. This Council just refused to see it. We all know that Iran's level of enrichment has no civilian usage. It's a fact. The Council doesn't need a nuclear scientist to understand what that means. The international community now knows what Israel has known for a long time. Iran was working on the key elements for a nuclear bomb in hidden facilities protected from international view. These were facilities like Fordo, originally built for 90% enrichment and hidden from the IAEA. Iran engaged in systematic, calculated assault on every safeguard this Council claimed would prevent them from attaining a bomb. Colleagues, Israel has been warning you for years. We warned you when Iran crossed the enrichment threshold. We warned you when it denied IAEA inspectors access. We warned you when it spanned lies at the negotiating table. Many of you refused to listen. You held onto the illusion that diplomacy was working. You convinced yourselves that silence was stability. You told yourselves that time was on your side. It wasn't. Iran used diplomacy as cover. It used this Council caution as protection. It used Resolution 2231 as protection while it built its dangerous arsenal. For years, what was Iran met with? Statements, concern, condemnations, but without consequences. Israel did what responsible nations must do when faced with extermination. We took action. We moved to dismantle what the world had allowed to grow unchecked. Madam President, this Council was built to uphold international law, not to be exploited by those who trample it. Today, as we speak, Iran remains untouched by consequences from the broader international community. The same Iran that refused IAEA inspections, the same Iran that enriched uranium to weapons-grade levels, the same Iran that used its seat at the table to delay, deceive, and arm itself. Madam President, there is still time to take meaningful and decisive action to ensure that the threat of a nuclear Iran does not return stronger than before. The international community must reassert its authority. It must remain vigilant. It must reimpose the measures necessary to deny Iran the tools of destruction. It must do so before the clock runs out. We are often told that diplomacy must be given a chance. It was given every chance, every round, every channel, every deadline, but so far it has failed. The regime in Tehran never had any intention of complying. Colleagues, you know who you are dealing with. You are not engaging with a regime that negotiates in good faith. You are dealing with the masters of lies, deceit, and delay. You have seen how they respond to your usual approach. So I urge you, take a different approach. Israel has done its part. The United States has done its part. Now the world must do its part. Thank you, Madam President.
I thank the representative of Israel for his statement. There are no more names inscribed on the list of speakers. The meeting is adjourned.